COVID-19 has tested our hope and faith as individuals, families, and the country at large. Besides destroying many aspects of our lives, the novel coronavirus has also affected our human rights in many ways. You and the Law, the COVID edition, is a 30-minute weekly television program that focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on human rights in Uganda. The program engages experts to explain the importance of rights-based approaches to the success of any public health response to ensure the respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights amidst the challenges presented by COVID-19. You and the Law, the television program, brought to you by Legal Hub Uganda, taking the law to the last mile in proud association with I4C Africa Hub and House of Talent Television.
If I may ask, have you insured yourself? What if your worker acquired or contracted COVID-19? And indeed, we see that because of the negligence at the workplaces, that is how the person contracted it. And then we trace back and it's to the employer.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Hello viewers, welcome to yet another episode of You and the Law, the COVID edition, here on House of Talent Television. My name is Jonathan Ochom, your host. As we've been doing before, we discuss about the law and how it affects the different aspects of our life. But specifically for this edition, we talk about COVID-19 and how it has affected various aspects of our human rights. And for today's episode, we are having a discussion on labor and employment rights. As you all know, most of us are working, some of you, have jobs or in any form of employment. But the advent of COVID-19 disrupted relations in the companies that we work in, the organizations that we work in. We saw people being laid off. We saw companies downsizing. We saw people being asked to work from home and lots of things that really changed relations on, in the employment sector. And to help us unpack how COVID-19 has affected the right to employment and general labor rights in Uganda, we're delighted to have Ms. Lydia Bwitte. Lydia is the programs manager at Platform for Labor Action. PLA, as we popularly call it, is an organization that works to protect and promote rights of workers in Uganda. Lydia, you're very welcome to You and the Law.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
How have you been?
Thank you for having me. I've been okay. Yes, I've been okay.
COVID-19, your personal welfare?
COVID-19, I think it has had its share on myself, but also, of course, those that I work for. And overall, as you're going to, I will tell you their stories.
Yes.
Yes.
And in terms of your work as PLA, maybe you could actually, tell us what you do before then you maybe tell us how you've been hit by this virus.
Oh, thank you so much. Platform for Labor Action, like you said, we are a non-government organization. We promote and protect the rights of vulnerable and marginalized workers in Uganda.
Okay.
And with that, we also have accreditation from Uganda Law Council to be able to give what we call legal aid.
Oh.
Yes, legal aid to workers, these vulnerable workers that we say we represent. And those vulnerable workers, ideally, these are workers that include children at risk or those in exploitative forms of work. We have those working in the informal sector, market vendors, street vendors, domestic workers. We have plantation workers. And then we have the low-income earners that earn from 600,000 and below. And those ones, of course, you look at the teachers, the cooks, the security guards, name it, all those fall within our target groups.
Oh.
So, yeah, we give legal aid support. We also have what we call social protection support. And maybe to the person watching us today, legal aid is basically we do mediation, arbitration, representation in courts of law, in arbitration stations, and being labor, we use mostly the labor offices. We also use mostly the industrial court of Uganda, and a few cases in the magistrate court.
Oh, the industrial court, that's a division. Is it in the high court or that's magistrate level? What level is the industrial court?
It's at the high level. It's a division of the high court.
Okay.
Yes.
So you mean before at the magistrate level, there's nothing for handling labor disputes, or?
They are there. We have some legislations, as we are going to see, or some laws that concern workers' issues. For example, like the Workers' Compensation Act, it gives the jurisdiction of such disputes to the magistrate courts. You have the NSSF Act, it also gives jurisdiction of such issues to the magistrate court.
I thought you just jumped into the
No, we don't
the
just
High
jump
Court.
into
Okay, I mean, this is a good, good one to start with. Just to understand really, because we're talking about employment, talking about labor rights. These are ideas that perhaps many people still need to understand. Like when you talk about employment rights, labor rights, what exactly are we talking about? What does it entail? Why should I even care about labor rights? Is that something I should lose sleep over? Is it a big deal?
True. True. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for that question. And maybe even to our investors who is watching this show elsewhere, even outside the country. Why should you care about the labor rights? First of all...
What are they, maybe to start with?
Yeah, I'm going to just come to just that. But why should we care? Because labor is a factor of production. Okay. So in production, we have this labor component, and often than not, when we are planning our businesses and everything, we never think about the labor force itself that actually is going to be doing this particular business that you're setting up, or this franchise that you're thinking about. So labor is a factor of production, but it has, and because it's a factor of production, if it's not well handled, it has a direct impact on the production, on the output. So if it's well handled, it also has very positive impact on the output, on the growth of every enterprise, every business that anyone sets up. So we need labor at the end of the day. So that's why you should care about labor. Going back to the law itself, as a country, Uganda is a very progressive country. Yes, when it comes to setting up laws and policies, we are a very progressive country. Even you're looking into the rest of the East African country, we are very progressive. We are a member of the International Labour Organization, and because of that, because it's labor, we have ratified, Uganda has signed quite a number of international conventions. And maybe to the person watching us, conventions are those internationally agreed upon, let me call them sets of like rules and regulations or laws. We can take it like that, literally. So those ones, those internationally agreed upon sets of laws and rules, is that they give a basis upon which a country goes back and actually contextualize those rules into their setting. So going back to the country as Uganda, when it comes to labor and employment laws, we have ratified a number of conventions, but I'll not go into so much of details. I'll look at that nationally what we have here. We start with the Constitutional Republic of Uganda, because you see everything comes from the Constitution. We know that it is our supreme law. It's the parent of every law that we have as a country. So when you look at Article 40 of the Constitution, that is on economic right. So that's where this right to labor is well, it's introduced into this particular supreme law that we have as a country. So it's talking about the right to work, the right to work in a safe and satisfactory work environment.
Safe and satisfactory. That's the language of the law.
Yes, that's the language of the law. The article talks about protection of certain workers, like female pregnant, workers. That same article is talking about the right to associate. That same article, when you read it into details, that is where we, as workers, labor and employment, we find our bearing in the Constitution under Article 40. So it details everything, and then it goes ahead to give powers to Parliament to make laws to ensure that to set up I'll call it a favorable working environment for both the employers but also the workers as well. So from the Constitution, the law that we have that comes an act of Parliament is the Employment Act of 2000. We used to have what we used to call the Factory Act, but that was changed in 2006. And when I'll come back another day and I'll tell you why we changed it.
Exactly, curious, because factory, then employment. So if I was working in a school, the law wouldn't apply to me.
It's because the law that was being changed at that time actually was a colonial law. So most of the worker, like the employment opportunities, were in the factories. So that's why we ended up having a Factory Act. And so it was what was governing the employment relationship at that time.
Africans are not doing
I think white collar jobs. So, but then in 2006 we see, it's also another history where we came up with these laws, but in 2006 we have the Employment Act of 2006. So this is now the guiding tool for any worker there, any employer there.
Yeah.
Why? Because it is, we call it is like the basic employment contract between the employer and the employee.
Basic.
It is the basic. That law is the basic.
What does that mean? Basic.
So, like it sets the standard. You cannot go below that.
A minimum standard.
That is the minimum standard. For example, if they say, let me give an example. If they say that you are a female employee should be given 60 days maternity leave. Yes. You cannot say you get 30. No. You can at least say you get 80. Okay. So that's why we call it the basic.
The basic.
Yeah. So you every provision there, and you cannot contract out of that law. In other words, you cannot have a contract of employment that is saying this provision does not apply to you. Like, for example, you're not entitled to leave. No, that such a provision cannot be allowed.
It's illegal.
It's illegal because we have this basic, or the law that states that standard, the starting point of negotiation of any contract. Even if you are negotiating a CBA, what we call the collective bargaining agreement, for those workers in unions, they still use that law as the basic, negotiating tool that they have. So under this particular law, we have different rights set out for the worker or for the employee. So now we have to be very careful. We use these words interchangeably, but actually they mean different things.
Worker
and the employee.
And employee.
Yes.
Okay.
If I go in the market and I find a woman selling tomatoes, she's a worker, but is she an employee?
You tell us. So how do you transit from worker to employee?
That is why I wanted us just to understand that particular concept as well, so that when we define these particular laws, we know who are we talking about. So when we go about an employee has to have a boss. Let me use that literal way of, like someone they report to, supervisors, and everything. So this person, then the other one becomes the employer, and then becomes the employee. So now that woman in the market who is selling her tomatoes, she's a worker, but she's not an employee.
We could argue she's everything. Chief everything officer. She employs herself. She pays her salary.
Unfortunately,
she knows when to work and not when to work.
Unfortunately, the principles of distinguishing between these two people cannot allow us to call her everything. Okay. Because if we call her everything, it will be hard when it comes to certain aspects. For example, we're going to talk about rights, and then we shall ask, and we shall go back, and you, our viewers, let us keep that in mind, that do these rights go to this particular person who is having their own enterprise? They have not brought any person on this stall to sell these tomatoes. They themselves are the owners, proprietors of this particular business that they are holding.
So are you suggesting, Lydia, then that workers and employees have different rights?
Yes, they will have different rights depending where they are. Okay. Yes, and I will just highlight that as we go on. Okay.
I know there are many laws, and you talked about the Employment Act.
Yes.
Or maybe any other that you want to?
I think I first do all the laws before I come back to the rights. Yes. So we also have the Workers' Compensation Act, like I shared. That one deals with issues to do with injuries in the course of employment or at workplace. And we will see what does it mean to be in the course of employment. You are traveling to work, or you are from work, you are at work, or you are protecting your employer's property and you're injured. So either it's injury or disease. You can have, and now where we are right now with COVID-19, this particular law has actually been put to test as we go on.
That's an important point. I think let's pause for a quick break, then we'll sort of come back and build on from there, because you've touched on a very sensitive area around injuries, and we've had a couple of cases, reported in the media of people, getting injured. Viewers, you're watching You and the Law, the COVID edition. And today we are with Lydia Bwitte from the Platform for Labor Action, one of the foremost NGOs working on to protect employment rights in this country. Let's go for a short break and we'll be right back.
When it comes to the law, we basically live the law, you know, on a day-to-day basis, you know. Whether it is in your bedroom, there is a law that governs it. If you're married, for example, even if you're single, there could be something touching on the law, because you might be in your bedroom with an underage girl, or you might be with another person's wife, you know. All the things are the law, you know.
If you're a human being, you have rights. Those rights are called human rights. They are examples: the right to health, the right to freedom from torture, that underscores human dignity. Freedom from slavery. You're not supposed to be someone's slave.
If you look at our penal code, it sets out another marriage laws. It sets out the persons who can marry and those who cannot marry, right? For example, you can't marry your close relatives. You know, if you did, you'd be committing a crime.
The state is not supposed to tell you who to worship, how to worship, how many times a day. No, you have a right to work. The right to work, you have freedom of association.
Cohabitation for whatever period of time does not make you husband and wife, right? And that is why we emphasize to people that when the relationship is still hot, you know, you must ensure that you do what? Marry.
Yes.
You know?
For human rights to be respected, protected, and fulfilled, relevant government programs must actually work. Medicine should reach hospitals, oxygen should be there, health workers should have gloves, teachers should be present. Now they are mostly absent, and they have left the profession, a good number of them. They are into trading. So things must work. If things don't work, human rights are not respected, are not protected, and are not fulfilled.
COVID-19 has tested our hope and faith as individuals, families, and the country at large. Besides destroying many aspects of our lives, the novel coronavirus has also affected our human rights in many ways. You and the Law, the COVID edition, is a 30-minute weekly television program that focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on human rights in Uganda. The program engages experts to explain the importance of rights-based approaches to the success of any public health response to ensure the respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights amidst the challenges presented by COVID-19. You and the Law, the television program, brought to you by Legal Hub Uganda, taking the law to the last mile in proud association with I4C Africa Hub and House of Talent Television, coming soon.
Welcome back. This is You and the Law, the COVID edition, and today we're discussing impacts of COVID-19 on employment and labor rights in Uganda, and we're hanging out with Ms. Lydia Bwitte from the Platform for Labor Action. She's the manager programs. Lydia, welcome back from the break.
Thank you.
Before we went for a break, you touched on a sensitive law around workers' compensation in Uganda, and highlighting how you could get compensated for injuries you get in the course of your work. I thought you could maybe carry on from there. Yes.
So that particular law is really focusing on if a worker gets injured in the course of employment, in terms of what are the obligations of the employer, in terms of offering treatment until he or she is completely healed. Healed. In fact, we have, you can offer treatment up to like 98 months. That is about 8 years.
Wow.
Then the responsibility to compensate.
Completely healed.
Yes, completely healed. You can heal. When I can heal completely when I have lost my arm, but I've healed, although I am now permanently incapacitated. So the employer is supposed to first treat me, I get completely healed, and then they assess my incapacitation, and then he or she compensates me.
And in all that period, you're supposed to be paid?
Paid, yes. Oh, I had left that one out, yes. During that period, you're supposed to be paid. That period, which we call temporary incapacitation period. That covers the period of hospitalization or any other period that the doctor and medical personnel has recommended that this person needs to be off work.
Oof.
So I heal, because there are people who get really sick.
Yeah.
Because it's not only dealing with injuries, it's also dealing with diseases that can be contracted in the course of employment.
Okay.
And that is when you look at the situation of COVID-19.
Exactly.
And we ask ourselves, are the employers even paying much attention when it comes to this particular pandemic and the impact it can actually have on them if the workers are not well protected? Because that same law also puts an obligation on the employer to ensuring the worker to ensure that insure
like the insurance company,
insurance company for the workers, for workers compensation, so that in case you have any liability, then your insurers should be able to meet that particular responsibility.
Okay. Lydia, we need to switch gears to talk about COVID-19, but I thought, are there any other laws you just want to drop one-liners?
Yes, we have the National Social Protection Fund Act, NSSF.
Yes.
We have the Public Service Act. We never talk about them, and yet they are
for
also workers.
People in government?
Yes, for people, for civil servants, those who work with the government.
Okay.
We have the Occupational Safety and Health Act.
Okay.
That is regarding to the environment where you work from. Is it healthy? Is it, is it the standard for you to be in as a human being?
That means should be fumigated or what?
We shall see. Is there aeration or all those things? You have drinking water, sanitation, all those ones that law looks at them. And then the responsibilities therein. What other law haven't I talked about? We also have the Minimum Wages Councils Act of...
I know you've been working a lot on minimum wage.
Yes, of 1984. So all that law is also there.
When are we setting the minimum wage for this country?
That one, I think you need to have a conversation.
It's a long conversation. Eh?
With
okay, so Lydia, you've given us a clear picture of what these rights are, and the law that provides for them, especially at the national level.
Yeah.
So then COVID-19 comes in and shakes things up. How do you explain to somebody, the effects that the pandemic has had on employment and labor rights? What are some of the issues that have emerged from a labor rights, employment rights angle? Yeah, because I know you deal with these things on a regular. Yeah.
True. Thank you. First, even before I come to that, very quickly, we saw that in the Employment Act, that's where most of the rights are.
Yes.
So the right to be paid your wages is your right, because it is the contract of employment is that you work and you are paid.
Yes.
So that is a very simple right.
Yeah.
Work and you are paid. So the right to be paid.
Yes.
But we have also rights like annual leave. The right to annual leave. Every worker is entitled to 21 days in every calendar year to go and rest, refresh.
You're working on Zoom. You're already
So we are going to come to that. That's why I wanted to first quickly highlight them, so that we see how these rights, as they are right now, how have they been impacted, and maybe the employer out there, what can they do, around this particular issue. Then we have the right to paternity leave. I said with paternity, 4 days for any wife. And the law is very clear when we say the wife. We mean the person whom you have entered into a marriage contract legally, a legally binding marriage. Because in law we don't use the word wife to mean cohabitation. No.
So are you suggesting that if my girlfriend gave birth,
true,
I am not entitled to paternity leave? Do I cease being the father? Because the person who has given birth is not.
Actually, you don't cease being the father, but there's a way when the law uses a certain word, and if you are to interpret it, in fact, your employer, if they asked you for the marriage certificate, they would not be wrong, because the law uses the word wife. And we know that for one to be a wife, we know the different marriages that are actually allowed in Uganda. Okay. So you need to pay attention to some of those particular areas. Yeah. But you have 4 days as a male employee, and your wife has given birth, you will be given. For the woman, we also have the right to maternity leave. of 60 working days.
60 working days.
Yes, 60
Let's clarify
working days.
this. What does that mean in terms of calendar months?
Yes.
What does it mean?
So we don't include weekends unless at your workplace, even before your maternity leave, you work 6 days. If you work 6 days ordinarily, then we shall actually count you 6 days. But if you work 5 days, we only count 5 days in
Monday
every
to
week,
Friday.
Monday to Friday. And also if there is any public holiday that falls within this period, we don't include it. So we don't include public holidays, we don't include weekends. So that is how we get to that.
So Lydia, in simple terms.
Let me also add something. 60 working days fully paid for.
Okay.
Yes. We've seen some employers who say, take off 60 days. You go, we shall fully pay you. No, 30 days. The other 30 days, we'll pay you half, unless you come back and work. There are such employers, but actually you do it, breaking the law, because the law says 60 working days, and those days have to be paid for.
Okay.
Yes, so that's the other right that someone has a right to rest. As they're at work, they should rest at least. You give them at least 1 hour of rest during their time.
Take coffee,
Take
lunch.
off. They also have a right to be paid overtime if they work overtime. And this one, ensure you as the employer, you need to ensure that, because we have seen the Industrial Court of Uganda setting for us precedents, you need to ensure that if a worker remains your employee remains at work, what are they doing? Were they able to deliver what they ought to have delivered in the 8 hours of the day? And if they are unable, then let them go back home. Because if they stay and sign out, if we sign out at 8:30 and I sign out at 9 p.m., it means that is overtime at the end of the day.
Lydia, so we need to switch to COVID-19 then.
Yes.
You've given us a very clear picture.
Yeah.
So how are these two mixed?
Those two mixed. So we started with a right to be paid.
Yes.
When you work, you are paid. Now, because of COVID-19, the economic situation has really affected the employers, really, because we've seen reporting of slow growth from the National Planning Authority, and indeed you can see it. So that has then led to violation of this right to be paid. I can tell you at Platform for Labour Action, 87% of the cases that we handle are non-payment of wages.
Oh dear.
So
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And the employers are saying we are not making ends meet. So I need them to be here, but I'm unable to pay them.
Okay.
Other workers, what has also happened is that COVID-19 has, in fact, is coercing, if I use all those words,
Yes.
is coercing workers to compromise on their rights. One of the rights is the right to annual leave. Now, you have periods where you're being sent into lockdown, and workers are sent back home, and they can't act, so they are not working. You expect them to work.
Yes.
We have seen those that have actually set up working from home,
Yes.
working on Zoom and
Teams,
all that,
yeah.
Teams and all those platforms that have come up. Now, but there are those other jobs that they need your physical presence for this work to be done.
True.
But you have a lockdown. The first lockdown we had was, it took about 2 months, 2.5 months, people were at home. And then when workers resumed, the question was, should they go, in that year, should they go for annual leave? in that particular year, should they go for annual leave?
Yes, very pertinent.
Very pertinent.
Yeah.
Now, the employers needed to, or you need to be able to prepare yourself to match this. You have a pandemic on one side, even it is beyond everyone's control.
Exactly.
And by the way, in most cases, employment acts don't have those provisions talking about those unforeseen events.
Yes.
In most cases, because normally those ones we see them in contract,
Yes.
agreements.
Yeah.
But when it comes to employment contracts, we don't have those clauses. So now here we are. I've been two months away. Can I be entitled to annual leave? So what other employers are doing that during that period we were away, you apply. Now it's forced leave ideally.
Yes.
So we are seeing situations of forced leave. You have to be on leave. The moment you go into lockdown, you have to be on leave, ideally.
Yeah.
And yet, this right to leave, when you look at the law, it's telling you it accrues.
Yes.
This right to leave accrues to you. Every after 3 months, you get. Every after 3 months, you get. We expect that you go and rest. But here, at the beginning of the year, you have to go and be on your annual leave.
And normally, I think the practice in Uganda, people want to take leave when they're going to do a project or to rest.
Yes.
Now you're being just told, go.
You go. And yet, in most cases, workplaces do not have leaves like a study leave.
Yes.
So if you're studying, normally people use their annual leave to go and do exams and all that.
Yes.
But here you are, the employer is saying, all of you fill in annual leave forms. Because you're at home and you are not working. So, for us to be able to pay you and what, when you come back, no going.
And the employer has a valid point, no?
Exactly, has a valid point on the other side.
Yes.
But also, how about this right when I choose to take my annual leave?
So where's the mix then? How
So
do we, what's the middle ground?
So the middle ground is you need to speak together as the employer and the employee. You should be able to speak because in most cases, employers do not consult, do not speak to the workers and say, this is what we are suggesting. And also you be fair. Because even you as a worker, you need to be fair to your employer. Because you're looking at the situation, they are paying your salary and you're not working. Isn't it only fair that at least you take off some of your days?
Leave, yeah.
And if you have such a time when you need leave, then bring it the notice of your employer and say, okay, that is a valid thing. But look, I was setting to have 5 days of my annual leave to do my exams around this time. So it may be your employer will also have it at the back of the mind that yes, this condition is, no one has control over it, and yet you already have this plan, so that you are able to have a middle, sort of like a middle ground.
Lydia, that's a very fascinating point because I know leave is also a slightly controversial issue which has been abused to some extent by many employers in the country. But I think it's an important point for us to go for a break so that when we come back, we'll pick on how far we've come as a country, what did we do to deal with the challenges posed by COVID-19 on employment rights. So let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back. You are watching You and the Law, the COVID edition here on House of Talent Television. My name is Jonathan Ochom, and today we're discussing the impacts of COVID-19 on employment and labor rights in Uganda. And we're privileged to have Ms. Lydia Bwitte from the Platform for Labor Action. Lydia, welcome back from the break.
Thank you.
So you left at the point when we're discussing this controversial issue of leave. I know it's a topic perhaps for another day, but we need to sort of have a deep dive then into what government has done, what initiatives have been put in place, and what your assessment of those initiatives is in the context of protecting employment rights during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because, as you know, these are human rights issues, and governments, have core obligations in this. So, first of all, what did the government of Uganda do to ensure that workers are protected in this period? And then I'll ask you, do you think it worked? Are there areas of improvement?
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you so much. At the beginning of the first, when COVID had just come, we saw a pronouncement from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development,
Yes.
calling upon employers to exercise humility.
Employers?
Yes,
Okay.
exercise humility during this period because it was no one's fault, that is number one. But also, they sort of imply that if you are to terminate, please terminate within the right procedures. Now, because of this, and when we ended, I was telling you just a quick effect of this, we have seen very unfair terminations during this period. And yet, the government called upon employers to terminate using the right procedures of whether if you're supposed to give notice, you are supposed to give that notice before you terminate someone.
Yes.
So that pronouncement was there. And not to try to abuse workers, right? It was there. But also we see that the government came up with a law. I think it's the regulation or a supplementary something on the Public Health Act. There is a supplementary, I think like a regulation,
Yes.
control COVID-19.
Yeah.
So that law requires that every Ugandan must wear a mask as long as you're out of your home.
Yes.
That is what. Now, how does that impact on the workplace here?
Yes.
Is it the duty of the employer to provide the masks, or is it that the employee should come with their mask? So some workers have gone on to report cases and say
Yes.
that my employer has not given me, and the employer is saying no, you're going to be terminated because you're not wearing a mask, and they have a right. I mean, they have a point on one side. We have also seen vaccination coming through. Now, government has put in place a vaccination that, for us to protect, which is the right thing,
Yes.
for us to protect ourselves from this particular pandemic that has come, we need to vaccinate. And I totally agree with the government. But you see, what has happened? They're telling some workers, if you're not vaccinated, don't come
Don't
at work.
come.
But what happens when I have lined up for that vaccine, well knowing that as a country I've been struggling to get this vaccine? Are you terminating me? But because you've said if you're not yet vaccinated, don't come to work. Is that termination or not? So when we are going back, I think in terms of reopening, what the government failed to do is to also make it very clear. Yes, when should it be that a person who has not been vaccinated should not access a public place? That the government has not been very clear, because some employers are using it or they are abusing this particular situation. Because we know very well that we've been struggling as a country to access vaccines.
Yeah.
And when you say if you've not been, we saw letters coming through and say if you've not been vaccinated, please do not report to work. So what does that mean? It means that there is lack of communication between the government programs or the action the government is taking in terms of ensuring that we have vaccine as a country vis-a-vis the employer's action. So we need that to come out. We saw government, of course, coming through with the Economic Recovery Fund.
Yes.
That went through the Uganda Development Bank.
Yes.
And it was targeting, of course, to liquidify these small businesses.
Yeah.
Well known that they're the engines of the economy. And of course, also we know that those small businesses employ, millions and millions of people.
True.
So that was supposed to ensure that now this worker who lost a job because of COVID-19, he's back to work. But you see, there have also been challenges in accessibility to this particular economic recovery fund.
Yes.
Equitability also has not been has been an issue around this particular issue. So we have seen even still small companies or the small and medium companies still not accessing this fund, and not their inability to access directly impacts on the workers at the end of the day. So we continue in that particular angle. And also there is an issue that we need to just talk about, the whole issue of now employers are also using this opportunity to abuse workers' rights. If you say you're not going to do it, Jonathan, there is 1,000 outside that door just waiting to take your position.
Exactly.
So everyone, you're willing even to compromise on your right. Why? Because there are no jobs. And the employers are using that as their road on. In terms of resolving issues, even an employer who is able to pay off 200,000 says that there is no money. And can go to the court and say, I'll pay 20,000.
Yes. There was this issue around NSSF. I'm sure there was an initiative around amending the law to allow people, access some of their savings because of the pandemic.
True.
I don't know if
yes.
if that worked as an intervention.
It did not work as an intervention. Allow amending the law and then people being able to access. No. In terms of midterm access to NSSF,
Yes.
as Platform for Labour Action, we introduced it. We worked with members of parliament to introduce it in the bill. And our argument was, like you've seen it in the news, that, let people at least access maybe at 40 or something.
Yeah.
Or when there's this bad calamity that cannot allow people to work, ideally. But I think that we are still in the other way of thinking that social protection is for the old age.
Yes.
You understand? Not covering all. So even when the bill that was passed by Parliament went before the President, the President again has sent it back.
Yeah.
Of course, with his comments on the same.
Yeah. So Lydia, we need to, as we sort of come to the end, we need to look to the future. In the worst case scenario, we could find ourselves in a similar situation in 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
And assuming Lydia is the new, Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development, or the PS in the ministry or whatever, what could be those points that you would push and say, as a country, this is how we should prepare for something of this magnitude? It may not be a perfect blueprint, but what are those ideas that should flaunt around, say, if we find ourselves in a similar situation, these are my recommendations, or that PLA recommendation on how, you think that the government should protect the rights of workers in a pandemic or a similar situation in future, worst case scenario it happen.
And indeed it will come. That is a given.
I don't want to be the one to predict
True,
it.
we hope that it will not come, but even this that we are going through right now, it was predicted that it will come. So we need to prepare better. If I was in that position that you have, envisioned at that point in time, one thing is that the law on NSSF needs to be strengthened.
Okay.
You see, social protection is not only for the old age. Why do you need to strengthen the social protection side of it, especially like NSSF? Why? Because if, let's say, imagine we had a withdrawal benefit of unemployment, a certain percentage that in instances of calamity where certain sectors are unable to work for a certain period of time, okay? Then this worker, the fund should be able to pay them a monthly wage, that goes into this person, like at least either to pay them that 10% or to pay them 5% their contribution to the NSSF, whichever it might be. Why? That way, workers would maintain their jobs. The employer would have no reason to terminate. Idea. Why? Because this employee is being covered during that period when even you as an employer, you are unable, to make ends meet. You're just struggling to stay afloat. This employee is being covered by this saving that you've been making, both of you. Remember?
Yes.
Both of you are making those contributions. Yes. So it is at such a time when they should matter most. That way you are protecting the job security for the workers, that when these sectors are able to resume work, then you just go back.
People pick on from there.
Yeah, they will pick on from there, and you don't have to lose your job, because what do you lose as an employer if the other person is covering this particular person for that period? That would be very, very interesting. I think the other thing I would do in that particular area, which even actually I wanted to start a campaign on that time, and I remember even Mr. Byaruhanga also proposed it. Byaruhanga is the
the NSSF
MD.
Yes.
He says instead of asking for NSSF,
Byaruhanga.
Yes. Asking NSSF to give you part of your savings, why don't you workers or employees tell URA to stop collecting pay for that period? No, by the way, when I looked at it, it was a fair argument, because employers are struggling to make ends meet. I'm also struggling to make ends meet. We say, are we in lockdown for how many months? 2 months? People are not working? Okay, maybe reduce. Okay, maybe you may not take it away completely, but you can reduce. So maybe if it's 30%, maybe you only pay 20%. We answer that 10% should be able to help you to cover other aspects.
But
that will also be
that payee is for for the government to be able to fulfill on most of the obligations it has. So
that's why we should share it during that period only. When it is over, we go back. Okay. But the other recommendation I would actually make is around, generally, it just goes back, because the ministry you have envisioned me in is that covers issues of social protection.
Yes.
Generally, to prepare better, to have a systematic social protection system that really covers for such for such comings that we
how would that work? What do you mean market protection systems?
A very comprehensive one, because right now our system, we have the SAGE, where cash, they give you 25,000.
SAGE is the social action.
The senior citizens grant.
Yes.
Where the old people get 20,000 shillings
per month.
Yeah. Okay. And then that's the only cash money that we are saying. Now, if you have a system, the system looks at the different vulnerabilities that affect this individual.
Yes.
Because you may resolve my problem of money, but you not resolve my problem of health.
Yes.
So we need to strengthen our social protection systems. They should be comprehensive enough to resolve Lydia's problems as an individual, not as money, because that's just one need. Money is just only one need. That way, if you actually, in terms of investment, we just need to invest around that area, because then the workers will not have need. We will not be in this saga where employers now, they're the bosses, they're everything. They have become more bosses than ever before, ideally.
I mean, Lydia, those are brilliant ideas, but I'm getting worried about, the practicalities, because, I mean, we're 42 million, or even there, I don't know how many workers or employees we have in the country. So I'm wondering, on a practical level,
yes,
how would this honestly come out? Because we have more pressing needs in this country. We provide security, there's education, there's everything else that government is dealing with. So I'm just wondering,
how will that
are we not putting a lot of? Is that a government mandate?
Yeah, true. You see, social protection doesn't only look at the money. It's look at the education, because Lydia needs education.
Yes.
Look at health. Lydia needs health. Look at what I'm saying is that the government should be able to properly coordinate or plan for this individual chronologically, that system, that the health ministry contributes, that the Ministry of Gender, they are speaking, that the education ministry, they are speaking, that at every corner we are actually speaking together. Because money they're in those different ministries, because it will not only be money for this, it's not different ministries. And yes, we have priorities of security, which I don't think that we are at war. Maybe we are at war, but we need to plan better in terms of planning better, but also to the workers themselves. I think also we have learned something.
Yes.
Let's save. Now that is not from legal perspective,
right,
but me being human in me, that yes, let us save something, even if it is 20,000 every month. Save, because you just never know when you will need it. It's very important. Save. Let us save.
For a rainy day.
For a rainy day is very, very important. So the employers, how are our systems ready for these? Were they even ready, or even are they ready even up to now? Because there are those that, yes, we have the pandemic here, but still the systems are not what? They have not been built, to take up still such. For example, if I may ask, have you insured yourself? What if your worker acquired or contracted COVID-19? And indeed, we see that because of the negligence at the workplaces, that is how the person contracted it. And then we trace back and it's still the employer.
Yes.
Are you ready to be able to meet this liability? The government came out and said the treatment for COVID-19 is a government responsibility.
Yes.
But we saw people fighting. We saw people, I heard on the news, members of parliament saying that private hospitals were even taking people's land titles, to treat COVID-19.
Yeah.
But are we ready as the employer?
Yeah.
Have you insured? Have you revised issues around work from home?
Yes.
Have you, the employer, included or incorporated issues of work from home? Because now the home has become a workplace.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I wonder if I ended myself from home when I'm working on a computer, whether I should ask for workers' compensation.
And then on a Zoom call and the baby comes
and then the baby comes in. So it's very challenging. Are we giving the workers the tools they need to work from home?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing demanding me from work from home. But Jonathan, when I don't even own a laptop.
Yeah.
My employee don't have a laptop. So how do we deliver from
and
home?
our data costs in the country.
Data costs in the country are high.
Yeah.
We're even having a tax, apparently. I didn't know until when I was told so. So we need to be ready as a country, as employers. We need to be ready. We need to revise our human resource manuals to take into consideration such happenings that may come at any given point. But also looking at the new families that a home as our place. Yes.
Okay. I mean, Lydia, so many things to talk about, but I think viewers, the most important point for me from Lydia, one, besides your employer, you need to prepare yourself. Do a bit of savings. She mentioned another one of the importance of marrying if you want to enjoy paternity leave, because you may not get it if the person is just, without legal status. But more importantly, Lydia has emphasized the need for government to, regulate the employment sector, put in place safeguards to ensure that when we find ourselves in such a situation again, we have a well thought out plan that can enable the country to protect the rights of its workers, because, like you say, labor is a factor of production besides land and capital, and without labor, there's nothing. The economy is dead. With that, viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of You and the Law. I've been your host, Jonathan Ochom, and I've been with Lydia Bwitte from the Platform for Labor Action. Special shouts to our sponsors, Legal Hub Uganda and I4C Africa Hub, for putting this together. Until next time, see you.